Welcome to the Ripple Effect Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Harper. I keep telling you, I keep bringing the cream of the crop to you because you deserve it. I am so grateful that you participate in this podcast, whether you're listening to it on the podcast platforms or you're catching this on YouTube. You know that I am bringing the heat every time that we bring an episode out because I have met some amazing, incredible people. Today is no exception. I was actually introduced to Deb Coviello by Woody Woodcock, one of our now infamous Ripplers, great guy, great supporter of my work. He was interviewed by Deb for her podcast called The Drop-In CEO. And he turned me on to the show, said he was going to introduce us and did. Once I connected with Deb, I was like hooked. I was convinced that she's someone that I definitely wanted to get to know. I want to build a relationship with. But most importantly, I want to expose her great content, her great way of doing what she does as an entrepreneur to you. I think you're going to be blown away. She's a really, really dynamic individual, really, really fun to talk to. I have already been on her episode or her podcast. Our episode dropped just this past week. And man, I'm getting some people on LinkedIn. They're like, hey, I heard you on the show. I didn't know anything about your work. I'm really fascinated. It's already creating ripples for me in a big, big way. So you never know where an introduction might lead you. But if you don't follow through and commit to see it through, see it out, you'll never know. And I'm so grateful that I took this step. I'm so grateful that Woody put my name forward. And I'm grateful that Deb liked me enough from her show to come on to this one. I think you're going to love her. So with no further ado, let's dive in to this episode with Deb Coviello. Guys, I am super excited to have Deb Coviello join us today for the Ripple Effect Podcast. Deb, how are you doing today?
Amazing, excited, got lots of energy, just had my lunch, want to just jump into this
You're bringing it
conversation
in.
with you.
I love it. Bringing
I
the A
am.
game.
Yeah.
Well, I gave a little bit of your accolades and how we met when I did the introduction, but I would love to just jump right in because I was honored to be on your podcast, The Drop-In CEO. I had such a great time. Our episode just dropped. I had people contacting me I probably never would have ever met thanks to you, right? And by extension, Woody Woodcock for actually connecting us in the first place. But tell us about your podcast to start and what kind of inspired and motivated you to do the Drop-In CEO.
Oh, okay. So you got about a half hour or so? No, really. So again, at a time, back in the day when I first started my business and I'm networking and starting to play around in LinkedIn, I started getting the bug for being guests on podcasts. Again, I'll make this brief. But one of the shows that I was on, they said, Deb, tell us a little bit about what you do. Please describe it. And I said, well, I'm kind of like the drop-in CEO. I drop into businesses, I assess the business issue with the C-suite leader, fix the problem, elevate the people, and then you pull me out. And when the show was done, they said, Deb, where did you come up with the drop-in CEO? And I kind of like took me aback and I said, I don't know. It just kind of came out of my mouth. But then in that discovery afterwards, I recollected there was like a CEO that dropped into a business about 15 years prior. We were in trouble. It was a startup. And he rolled up his sleeves, partnered with us, made us feel good, solved the business problem. And then when we were ready to go IPO, they pulled out that CEO and dropped in the next level of leadership.
Mm,
And I just remember how he made me feel during that experience. And after I shared the story, he says, well, that's brilliant. You got to own it.
yeah.
And I said, no. I'm Deb Coviello. My company's Illumination Partners. But after 5 months and then saying to myself, you know what? I want to do my own podcast.
Yeah.
I don't want to be chasing others. I want my own stage to invite who the heck I want onto my show. I finally said, let's do it. Let's call it the Drop-In CEO. Since then, I have trademarked the Drop-In CEO, and everything is a derivative because that's just who I am as
Sure.
a person. Dropping in, solving problems, elevating the people, and I'm sticking to that.
I love it. Well, since you were, the experience sort of formed that in your mindset about what you would do at this show. You said you never forgot how they made you
Mhm.
feel during that time.
Yeah.
Was that a positive or a negative? I'm curious in terms of, how that transition took place.
Well, it's one of those things when you're in crisis and somebody drops in and it's going to be a change, it's always met with being scared and, okay, how is this going to
Sure.
affect me? Well, when he dropped in, he just said, okay, guys, let's just roll up our sleeves. And he sat with us and worked on an Excel spreadsheet. Let's just organize this problem and let's just do this. And at a time when I was 35 and a director at a startup company, oh boy, we'll talk about having no confidence and needing that being built up. Well, he made me feel confident that I could do this. He did guide me to a better way and painted what a better day looked like. And I felt much more confident. And he left his legacy and impression. And by the way, about 3 months ago, I found him again and I actually talked to him and told him how he made me feel
Oh,
by that encounter. So I've had closure,
that's awesome.
and it was just an amazing experience. But they made me feel wonderful. And when I drop into businesses, it's usually deer in the headlight. How am I going to get them through either this crisis or this growth transformation? And with a calm voice, even though I'm deer in the headlight, how the heck am I going to do this whole thing? Um, I give them the sense of confidence and I guide them. And so the drop in CEO brand is taking things from being chaotic or I don't know how we're going to do this to we're going to do this together.
Yeah.
And again, make people feel good for the accomplishment, high five. And that's the legacy I want to leave. You'll forget about the work we did, but the legacy of how we made people feel. And again, why I remember Mike, who was the drop in CEO.
Uh, I love that. And I can say having been a guest and having a fair amount of communication, we had, a couple of fits and starts trying to get our episodes scheduled, right? One for your show, one for mine. And
Yeah.
you were so gracious. But when we actually had the pre-interview, I think for your show, one of the things that I just have to commend you on was how comfortable you made me feel from the get-go. I could see how that transitions to your work. You just have this very really cool, chill way vibe about you that I the whole time I was sitting there, I'm like, I could just keep talking to her the whole time. And so I'm like, okay, let's see how it goes with the interview. And you were that and then some with the interview. I just love it because I think that's one of those things that you either have it or you don't. And when you do have it, you're able to accomplish so much more. And that's why when you do what you do for the clients that you serve, I could see why you're such a value add to their operations because I think you aren't looked at as a threat. You're looked at as, hey, this is a person that's buying into what we're doing, and she's here to help us get over whatever obstacle or problem we might be facing. But she's really someone that cares about what she does and cares about the people she does it for.
Yeah. So when we're done, where do I send the check to for that accolade?
Feel
But
free
but
to put that on a billboard anywhere you want. It's okay.
so here's the truth of the matter. I wasn't always that way. Now, the voice has always been that way, but that's kind of like my superpower that comes with.
Yeah.
As a trained engineer, we are taught to be A1, results oriented, perfect, logical, concise.
Process,
And
process,
yeah, yeah,
process.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And during my career, you're celebrated for that. But then at some point, you hit a wall because, well, where's the consensus building? You've got to do things as a team. And as my roles grew bigger and I had to work with different cross functional teams and internationally, even though I had that A1 personality, if you personality typed me, and I can revert to that, by the way, I'm a Gemini, so that's multiple
Me
personalities.
too. Oh, no.
But anyway, but the thing that I found that got me the farthest was then, okay, often I'm coming into chaotic situations, cross functional teams. How do I level set what is it we're trying to accomplish and then reframe what is our purpose and the problem,
Oh,
and then using my voice to listen but also to then speak the truth and get people to calm down and focus. Well, that became kind of my superpower. And often people thought when they personality typed me, oh, she's one of those kind of those tree huggers, she builds consensus, she's all about emotion and all that. Well, yes, I do care about people. That's why we're here, is to connect with humans. But that's also what we need to do with people in order to move people forward, is that calm
absolutely.
effect. I hear you. I care about you. I see you not as a transaction, but as a person that has value.
Yep.
I believe that. And so that's kind of part two of my career of I care about people and we work through people. They're not transactions. So thank you for that compliment. A lot of people should learn from that because it's not always taught, or if you don't have a good role model.
I love that. Well, and you're welcome because it's 100% true. I am curious though because you touched on, going up the career ladder, obviously working for other companies by which you didn't start. How did you make that transition from leaving, sort of that comfortable arena that you obviously were successful at, and you continued to, find, new barriers to break through. But how did you decide, okay, now I want to go do this on my own and have that kind of ripple effect to other businesses?
Yeah, so that is kind of the journey that I'm wasn't so proud of, and I didn't tell the stories, but now I own it because all these things happen to good people. So I had in my corporate career about 2 years prior, I had moved up, was starting to accomplish great things, but there were bumps in the road and my region was not performing as well as it
Hmm.
should. And I was in trouble. We were 4 out of 4 and we went to this global meeting for which I had to create this wonderful presentation, present it to my colleagues in upper echelon. And what am I going to do in the following year? Well, I didn't have my presentation done by the time I went to this meeting, but hours on the treadmill, putting post-it notes, etc. I realized I've got to do something different. First, starting with me as a person, what was my purpose? And I realized it was to help people struggle less and through removing barriers, help people to do the work without having confidence issues and all that stuff. Well, when I delivered my presentation, two-thirds of it was storytelling. And why are we here? And who am I going to be as a leader? And how am I going to lead differently? And this is how I'm going to remove barriers and elevate my people. And only in the last third did I say, and this is what we're going to do in the following year. And I was so proud of it. But what? But then off to the side, or actually at the end, well, Deb, that was really inspiring. That was very nice. But you didn't spend enough time focusing on the projects and the deliverables for the
Mm,
following year. And I was absolutely deflated because I had discovered myself. And again, I'll fast
yeah.
forward to what happened after that. But in that moment when we had lunch, some of my colleagues were sitting with me and I still felt deflated. And they said, Deb, I said, we loved what you said. We need more leaders like you that are self reflective and have a different approach.
Yeah,
If we still hire the same kind of people, we're going to get the same result.
that's right.
And so 2 years prior me exiting that business, the writing was on the wall that I led differently. Okay, fast forward. We had a lot of success that year, but also we had a very critical juncture. Got very stressful, tough job. That's what I signed up for. Got kicked out of the nest.
Uh,
I got kicked out of the nest, which happens to the best of us. And it was the blessing that put the cherry on top. When I told my husband one day, I said, I can't take this anymore. Something's got to change. I had exceeded my faculties of being able to manage it. And without notice and without warning, I was given notice, respectful, severance, the whole bit. And it was the biggest blessing to say, what do I want to do? How can I serve and do it on my terms? And with that, Illumination Partners was born. Lots of stories behind the naming of that, but I then became liberated and decided what kind of future do I want? Who can I provide value to? And it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I'm still on that journey.
I love that. So as you broke out from that corporate mold and started creating your own platform, your own, offering,
Yeah.
what did that look like? How did you knew what you wanted to do, but how did you go about building that business? We get a lot of folks that are early stage entrepreneurs, people that are going, back for a second or third bite of the apple on another venture. How did you go about going from, probably an organization that probably provided you the streamline aspects to growing a business, and the team and the structure, and then all of a sudden, you leave one day and now it's you, and it's that process. Like, how did you overcome that fear of just starting?
Well, a lot of crying, a lot of podcast episodes, listening to those, a lot of reading some books, and yes, going through all the outplacement services, setting you up to start getting your next job. And I said, no, I don't want to work for somebody else anymore. I'm running away
You
from
want to be
that
the job.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So anyway, quick and dirty. Just started networking with first degree connections on LinkedIn, who then introduced me to second degree connections. And the interesting thing, which was a signal from the universe, within 6 months I had 3 gigs. And I said, "Oh, I've got this thing going on," and great work. I dropped into some businesses, went to Singapore, went to California, the whole bit. I said, "I got this." And then about 2.5 years later, everything came to a screeching halt because guess what?
Yeah.
I didn't have a pipeline.
Yeah.
Oh, sales.
Yeah.
I just thought the things were going to come. And so with that learning, I kind of ran out of money. But in parallel, I realized I didn't need a fancy PowerPoint. I didn't need business cards. I needed to stand out. I needed to stand out big from the pack,
Yep.
not just be a business consultant. And consultant, ooh, that could have bad meaning depending on what your experience is. And
Yeah.
oh, the new buzzword, fractional leaders, fractional COO, CQO, etc. Again, that was gaining popularity. This voice, this Deb Coviello, female entrepreneur, flavors and fragrance industry, who the heck is she? She's got to stand out. And
Yep.
so I got active in marketing myself as the drop in CEO and building a brand because people in the end, and I never learned this until later, was they want to know what you stand for. That when you walk into the room and what you stand, when you start speaking, it's consistent. This is your message and this is why you're different. And also storytelling, not just regurgitating my resume. So again, building a brand, networking more than just your first and second degree connections, and ultimately building those business processes to continue to nurture either great referral partners or past clients or future clients. And podcasting,
I love
stages,
that.
inviting people onto my stage or going on theirs,
Yep.
meaningful networks. Get your voice out there. You need to be heard. It builds incredible credibility and you become more interesting. So, those are a lot of the bits and pieces I had to learn along the way to build a business. But by the way, I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm still not perfect, but I love the journey.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what I love about really honest entrepreneurs is none of us actually have it figured out. We're all trying to, figure out what the next new strategy is or the next new approach. And so you never feel fully satisfied or complete. It's a process, it's a journey. And I love how you frame it that way. And I can see why the show became such a linchpin in terms of business development effort, because what a
Yeah.
great way to actually talk to some of these CEO leaders, some of these people that are out there, blazing trails that would otherwise not be open to, say, like a sales call or,
Yeah.
a conversation about what you bring to the table. But when they get an opportunity to spend some time with you on the podcast, you get to hear some of their nuggets and some of their challenges. It gives you some really good insight to carry that conversation forward beyond the podcast, I would imagine.
And yes. And the other nugget I want to share, and again, you and I talked about this when you were on my show, is that element of networking. So, Deb,
Yep.
how did I get my first gigs? The ripples started 5 to 10 years prior to me
Yeah.
even starting. It was those relationships that I had in corporate that people remembered what I did, and I went back and nurtured, even if I hadn't talked to them in 5, 6, 7 years. Those are the people I'm getting the referrals now from.
That's awesome.
And I'm not necessarily getting that ripple effect, the big ripple from the people that have been on the show. Again, great
Mm,
conversations, but it's just an entry point to
sure.
continue the conversation, show them that I care. Because so often, if they ghost you, people just write them off. No, I'm still there. I'm
Yep.
thinking about you.
Yeah.
And so, all the seeds from the podcast since 2020 have yielded some of my coaches and business advisors that I've used. And
Love.
some of the people have referred me to business, but all of those seeds that I'm planting now, those ripples are going to take 2, 3, 5 years from now to actually incur. We just need to be disciplined and care about people to stay in it for the long game.
Yeah. And but to your point, right? From where you started with the three clients and not building a pipeline, what you're doing now has sustainability in terms of the pipeline for years to come, which is phenomenal strategy. I think it's
Or
brilliant.
or at least I'm sticking with it for now because again, at the end of the day, it's not necessarily about did you get that gig,
Yeah.
but how many people thought of you just to make an introduction. It's really the leading indicators being top of mind.
Yep.
Checking in. How are the
That's right.
kids? I hear your father was in the hospital. Is he doing better? Just a little bit. And sometimes it's such a fast paced environment. We don't take the time to care. And that was me.
That's
Again, hustle, hustle, hustle.
yeah.
That's what they tell us to do. And it's how many people do we say we care?
That's right. I mean, and the people that do reach out in those moments, right, that are checking and they have a genuine interest, there's an authenticity to the follow up. It's not clearly a sales tactic just to get the deal. They remember you. And oftentimes they will come and probably pay you way more than you ever anticipated they would, simply because you set it up correctly. And so I think
Yeah.
that's a phenomenal strategy for sure. Just to give my audience a little perspective. So, from the type of work that you do, give us just a high level of what an organization would genuinely get or benefit from having you come in and work with them.
So Thank you for that. There's two ways that I am asked to drop in to an organization. But it's always a point of transformation or transition for a company where they have exceeded their capacity and capability to do the work. It's usually a pretty well established small to medium sized company, and it's the CEO or like the VP that's starting to feel some pain. There's something in their stomach that's not right. They have a great team, but they're faced with a new customer challenge, or they're losing customers, or they lost some critical people. Sometimes they wait too long to ask for help. I can just work harder. And then they say, Deb, can you drop in? We're in crisis. We
Yeah.
just had to fire our quality leader and I got a recall going on. Deb can drop in and stabilize a situation, assess the landscape for where you got broken processes and broken people. And
Yeah.
then I'll work with you and coach you on what do we need to do to sustain it. A little bit more expensive because it's so critical. And sometimes I'm asked to drop in within days.
Sure.
I do that work. But it's the leaders that say, oh, I've been doing great, but I don't see my team rising to the occasion. We've been just asked to elevate our game from a customer. I don't think we have the capacity to do it. They're proactive and said, I'm not too proud to look for external support. And
Yep.
so I'll be brought in during a time of we need to achieve a food safety certification. We got a good foundation, but we have no idea what good looks like. Can you drop in? And by the way, I'm in one of those situations now. By the way, I'm deer in the headlight. Like, how am I going to get this done by X date? Well,
Yep.
I got a highly motivated team, a highly supportive CEO. When you've got that kind of culture behind you, you're going to go gung ho and make anything happen. And it's going to happen. I love working with customers like that because then I did it with another customer because they got that certification. They become more credible. Business development opportunities open up. And then I'm called back and say, Deb, we just opened up our third facility, and you feel that wonderful moment that you had just a little bit of part of that success that they're now realizing now. That's kind of the work I do, both technical, but also a lot of people development and confidence building and building their capability.
I love that. I can see why clients love working with you, no doubt. Tell us like the one surprising thing that you sort of discovered either about yourself or by just going down this path, coming from corporate and starting your own thing. Was there something that you didn't expect or pleasantly surprised you, or maybe didn't pleasantly surprise you?
So if you saw me about 4 years ago showing up on LinkedIn doing videos about my thought leadership, you would say, hello, I'm Deb Coviello, the Drop In CEO, and I'd like to talk to you today about this particular thing that I've been seeing. My face would be engineer like. I wouldn't have a lot of movement and flow. To one day, my mentor at the time, Peter Gorel, said, Deb, love the content, but can you just get over yourself? And it was one of those things like, I mean, I looked the part, I looked corporate,
Yeah.
but I wasn't being totally myself. And it was, again, who really wants to see the Deb with her hands going all over the place, her hair that's a little bit frizzy right now due to the humidity? I needed to be perfect because that's how I was groomed. Now,
Yeah.
a lot of people say, Deb, we can't believe the transformation you went through from corporate to what you're doing now. And rather than just saying, well, thank you, I became a new person, I became Doctor Who and regenerated myself, it was more of, I became who I once was. And as a child, I was creative
Yeah.
and talkative and artistic and what if and what about the possibility and love being on a stage. I was on many stages as a child. And society kind of squelched that and it had me conform to the educational norms. And Deb,
Yeah.
can you quiet her down? She talks too much, even though I was highly intelligent and pretty advanced at the time. And then even corporate, I'll speak out of turn because I didn't know how to align with stakeholders. Deb, that you shouldn't have said that without any coaching.
Yeah.
I am now liberated as a business owner to discover who I am and just be me.
Yeah.
So the thing that I discovered about myself was it was okay to be just me.
I
And
love.
that's okay and people will like it. So big tip for anybody out there. It's okay to be just you.
Yeah, and I think that the more comfortable you can get in showing up as your authentic self, the more the world rises up to meet you in
Yeah.
kind, right? I think if you put on airs or you walk around trying to play a certain role, and I think I think, and you've probably seen this with the clients you've worked with, people try to do things based on the responsibility or the title that they've been given, and
Yeah.
sometimes they're putting on these airs that are so foreign. It makes them, super rigid, super, non-approachable. A lot of times you feel like as a leader, you got to be a dictatorial or authoritative kind of
Yeah.
leader, and don't ask me how to do it, just get it done kind of person. And sadly, that's not what the new generation of workforce is looking for. It's not what inspires a lot of organizations for growth. And when people don't feel like they can connect with the leader at that level, and they feel like there's always just something a little bit off, like they're just not the authentic person that they
Yeah.
could be, nobody really wants to work harder to perform, any more than they should for their role, because there's really no drive or motivation to do so. And so I think what you do is in how you show up, I think is fantastic, because you're living that right now as a true example, which I think is probably a real inspirational shot in the arm for the leaders you serve as well as the teams that see you.
Yeah, I so appreciate that. It always feels good when you get those accolades. But honestly, where I want to go with that is that you still should be a professional.
Yeah.
But these are messages, whether you're in corporate or you're out there for yourself. I still show up as the authority. I remember doing this RFP for this current client. Again, I love them. And I had to say, well, this is what my approach was. This is what I suggest. And you will see the authority, the credibility come through. And they said, okay, great. We like your approach, but we'd like to have this by August. And I'll go, and then I apologize. God, I'm sorry. I just giggled, but it was,
Yeah.
that's a bit aggressive,
Yeah.
and I will support you, but let's figure out how we're going to do it. That little giggle is me. That's my
That's you.
soul
Yeah.
bubbling through. And so those little nuances, whether it's an eye roll, a giggle, or a hand gesture, don't be afraid to use that, because people, if they don't understand it, then you say, "Oh, let me explain my reaction." Because again, it's the soul coming through in some kind of
Yep.
chemistry, or even your face. Again, you got to be mindful of how your face looks up. I always used to have a very straight face. I had to force myself to smile because I'm grateful for this conversation. But again, be professional,
Yeah.
be the authority. People want to trust you because they're going to get you to a place, but they also want to be able to say, I like her.
Yeah.
I can trust you. You might be interesting to work with. That's really the greater outcome, whether
It
in
is.
corporate or business, is do I like you? And I trust you to do this together.
Well, the funny thing too is if I put myself in a decision maker role and I'm thinking about the two or three people that I interviewed before you, and then you come in because they all told me what I wanted to hear because they're all trying to get the business. So they'll tell you
Right.
what you want to hear in order to do it. And then the excuses come later, as we find, with a lot of organizations. But you saying, hey, okay, that's a bit aggressive, but let's walk back this timeline and let's look at what we can agree to and what we can realistically accomplish in the time frame you've outlined. May not be everything, but I definitely will give it, my best shot to deliver, certainly more than you expect during that time period. That, like you said, that combined with just the personality and just no BS filter attached, right, is a huge way for people to immediately bond with you and have that level of trust. And that's the biggest challenge, I think, for people that are, whether you're a coach, whether you're a consultant, some sort of strategic expert, people are so fixated on showing what they can do from the technical and the tactical, and all of that's important. And like you said, being professional and in that business environment, it's important to live up to a certain level of standard. But at the same time, people don't buy process, they don't buy the necessarily always the output, they buy the person that's going to help them do what they need to do.
Yeah, and to add to that, many people put themselves in a box, whether it's a new job opportunity or a role that's lateral. They'll say, "We'd
Yeah.
like you to do this." And you say, "But I've never done that before."
Yeah.
And we immediately retract, saying, limiting ourselves. But if you think about, you were a baby and you were crawling once and you figured out how to walk and then to run, somehow you figured it out. So we never praise ourselves for being resilient and being able to figure things out. A case in point, I had a client in Singapore of all places, and I helped them to get a particular certification. And then after we built trust and we got through that hurdle, they says, I need you to do this, Deb. Now, the framework and the approach was basically the same, but technically I had never done it before. And
Yeah.
I was honest with him. I said, I've never done this before. And he says, don't worry, we'll figure it out together, because he trusted me.
Yeah.
Again, people trust the person, and those soft skills. of being resilient and resourceful and trying to figure it out along the way. It's not necessarily your technical experience. So again, I appreciate the opportunity to share this. I'm hoping somebody out there is taking some of this wisdom. Just trust yourself, be yourself, but also by doing that, you're going to get hired or you're going
Yeah.
to get that offer or that opportunity. It pays dividends. Yeah.
It does. One thing that you really struck a chord with me is that, and especially for folks that do the kind of work that we do, right? There's two ways to answer that question. If an expectation is put on the table that you haven't done, you could be, "Ooh, never done that before," or, "Ooh, exciting. I've never done that before." Be a little patient with me because I'm learning. But, where do you think that falls with your decision maker when they hear it? One, they're like, "Okay, definitely not the right fit." And the other's like, probably no doubt the right fit because they're not diving in and telling me what I want to hear, or they're not immediately rejecting it, but they're willing to learn. They're willing to expand their horizons. They're willing to, to do what I'm actually asking them to do, put in front of them. And I think that's just, it's huge. And I think from a decision maker perspective, right, or a leadership team, I think they do want to connect. But the thing you said that really resonated with me is, oh, I like her. I like the honesty. I like the approach. I like the fact that she doesn't take herself too seriously, and she's not telling me I'm wrong that we can't possibly get this done by August, but she's probably saying, hey, it might be a stretch goal, but here's what we need to do in order to try and get most of your
Yeah.
expectations met if we can. But you're not BSing anybody on that front, which I think is phenomenal.
And so you bring up a really good point about decision makers and their decision logic. And again, maybe if you're a recruiter and you get, resumes and this one has all the bells and whistles and you interview people, sometimes people like to check the box and say, okay, they got all the bells and whistles. They're going to deliver on the transaction or what I need. And I propose, and again, highly aware leaders understand this, that we don't just hire a transaction or people to get a particular result. We should be hiring for people that can set the future.
Yep.
Again, depending on what that role is, or if it's a lower entry position, can they grow with the organization? Are they curious? Do they want to learn? I'm investing in a future person, not the person to solve a particular business issue right now. So, yeah, I mean, just be confident that I've got the capability to figure things out. And to that point, I had an opportunity after I was kicked out of the nest to join a company. Again, a director of quality that was right up my alley. But I didn't have a particular certification. They couldn't check the box, even though a 2 hour interview went to 4 hours. They didn't hire me. And I said,
Oh,
okay, well, I couldn't check the box on that. The funny thing is 5 months later, they still hadn't found a replacement. And then they were at a place of crisis. So the leader reaches out to me and says, Deb, I got this situation. Can you put together a proposal? I said, what about that certification I didn't have? And he says, don't worry about it. I need you. It's funny how these check the box things are so short sighted when it comes to making decisions
yep.
about people or resources to bring into the organization. Don't make that same mistake.
Yeah. I love that. That's a great story. So, so tell me about the CEO's Compass, this book that you've produced. And what was the inspiration behind it, and what do you want CEOs everywhere to get from it?
So there's a couple reasons why I had to write the book. Early on, I was putting all kinds of articles and thought leadership out on LinkedIn. People said, Dev, we love your content, but we don't know what you're about. What's your
Mm.
system? What's your approach? What's your operating system? And I said, ooh, I gotta kind of pull it all together. But the CEO's compass is not just how I go into an organization and assess what the gaps are, fix some people, fix some processes, fix some platforms or tools, or put in a new ERP system. When I was in corporate and we acquired smaller companies, and then we had to bring them onto the mothership, so often they treated that just as a transaction. And I realized I had to go to those companies to understand what was so wonderful about them as a culture and their portfolio and the
Yeah.
people and their unique qualities. And because I spent time earning their respect and understanding the culture, two additional thought leadership points came to me is when we try to fix things, we need to understand their past, what they bring to the table, and pride. What is their unique intellectual property or skills or gifts that maybe we haven't tapped into?
Yeah.
Again, all about the person, nothing about tools and stuff like that. So, anyway, long story short, I said, I got to pull all this together. And I had a house and I had a tree and I had a diamond. And eventually I settled on a compass. But the key point was my different thought was that CEOs are constantly chasing results, but really they're in pursuit of peace of mind.
Yep.
Peace of mind means I got the right people with the right process going towards the right vision. That became the northernmost compass point. And then all of the other points, people, process, purpose, past, pride, etc. That's a tongue twister there. All came together. And I was then able to finally systematize what I've been trying to communicate to C suite leaders, CEOs. One of my first chapters, I said, I see you. I see you looking out the window, trying to figure out how am I going to get through this day? Because they've been wildly successful and their old playbook doesn't work anymore. They're not broken, they're just a little bit off track. So by creating your own adventure, looking at my different compass points, you might find that you're off here and off there, and a couple course corrections will bring you to peace of mind, which is quite different than getting just results. That's the CEO's compass, your guide to get back on track, and my framework for how I see leaders off track and how I might be able to support them or fix it themselves.
I love it. I love it.
Thank
And
you.
for my Ripplers, you can find the book on Amazon. You can find it on Audible as well, right?
Yep.
And
I
all
narrated it
Kindle
too. Yeah.
e-readers, yeah. I love it. I love it. I really, really, I mean, I could talk to you all day. When we got off the episode that we did for you, I just like, I love talking to you, and I can see, that I said this in your introduction that, you're stuck with me as a friend because, we've got work to do. We're going to find some ways to like support and, collaborate in some capacities. Cause I dig what you do and how you do it and want to try and support that work as much as possible. If you weren't doing what you're doing now, would you go back to corporate or would you start something completely different?
Oh, what a question. So when he asked me 3 days after I got kicked out of the nest and I actually had a job
Yeah.
interview, my husband says, "Do you want to go back to corporate?" And I said, "No, no, no. I never ever want to go back to that behemoth again, despite the travel and the glory and all the benefits." However, answer it in two ways. For
Okay.
the perfect company that I can serve, usually a small and medium-sized company, if they need my services and it's a fit and I can do my best work, I would gladly go back. But if that were not in the cards, and looking at what I love to do and what I'm really good at is my voice.
Yeah.
My voice is my superpower. It is my pathway to connect with others. So as we speak, I am trying to find ways to get my voice out there to connect with more people by guesting on shows with generous hosts like yourself. I just had myself videotaped at a conference, both on site and off site, for a speaker reel and let
Awesome.
people out there know that either I can speak or I could be a professional moderator for your event,
Yeah.
creating great value in conversation. So, this voice, again, I was not trained as an engineer, that my voice could be something I could monetize or provide value, but I am trying to create some kind of media thing for which I can connect one to many.
I
And
love
that's in the cards.
Well, I can definitely tell you don't have an engineer's voice. So that's a significant, positive right there for sure. You really do. I mean, in all honesty, I was talking about that earlier, right? But just your calm, collective way of communicating, it's so comforting and reassuring. But at the end of the day, you also take some really complicated subjects and you break it down into bite-sized morsels for a dum-dum like me, which is I appreciate. But at the end of the day, I can see that being like that next thing for you because the podcast is phenomenal. The guests that you get on there, what you pull out of them in terms of the nuggets, I mean, you are definitely gifted in that arena for sure. And I can absolutely see why you'd be such a powerful keynoter from the front of the stage.
I appreciate that because I have done speaking. Again, this is just you and me talking.
Yeah.
I have done speaking and I was a little bit green. I had a PowerPoint behind me. Might have relied too much on the PowerPoint. I had talking points, but I had to write them on my hand. I didn't memorize them. I mean, all of those things. And I would love to do more but I haven't done yet that TED Talk. But
Yeah.
I am getting ready to do that TED like talk because I think there is so much bottled up in here for
Yep.
just me to show up and say it. But right now, for now, little sound bites with podcast hosts on these platforms. This is my stage. I'm
Yeah.
already living the dream.
Yeah, and you're doing it well, really, really
Thank you.
well. I always like to wrap up these interviews with a few Ripple connection questions. I've kind of already sprinkled a few in there, but at the end of the day, I would love to, just take you on this journey. The Ripple connection questions are fun to ask, but they're fun to answer. There are no gotchas. But are you okay with that?
I am. I'm ready to dance. I'm standing on my
So, what did the 7-year-old Deb want to be when she grew up?
a butterfly.
A butter. Oh, that's
I
cool.
just, think of a little girl running through the backyard with an imagination and butterflies flying, and oh my goodness, the bad person's going to get us. No, the freedom to float and be creative, which is who I am. But there's my answer, and I'm sticking with it.
I love that. That's fantastic. You give us a sense of your favorite thing to do when you were a kid. What was the aside from chasing butterflies? What was your favorite hobby? Did you play sports? Did you like were you into anything specific before you graduated high
Yeah.
school?
Anything. Well, I threw the javelin. So I threw things.
Ooh, nice.
I threw the javelin in high school. And by the way, I throw stones now. I'm into dangerous things here.
Wow.
No. But anyway, I was highly creative. I could sing, I played the clarinet, I played the saxophone. When I was a
Wow.
young kid, I was doing arts and craft, crocheting. I cook now. Anything that has a creative element that I take nothing and turn it into something. I love to write. I used to write plays. That creative element, that creative flow fulfills my soul, and then being able to pour something out at the end. So, by the way, fast forward, I love to cook. That's a problem if I don't have an army to feed, but still, my ability to feed community through food, through nourishment, through entertaining. But also, I love to continue to write now. Don't ask me to sing. I can't sing worth a lick now, but I got my voice instead. So that's kind of a kind of singing.
I love that. That's great. Um, what is the thing that most people get wrong about you?
They might think they could think I'm a little standoffish or introverted because if I'm not turning on the charm right now and I'm at a large social event, I like to kind of be in the background in the kitchen cooking, and I'll be kind of the person listening to the conversation and not necessarily jumping in.
Yeah.
I have my time where I get energized from conversations like this, but I also need my quiet time. And sometimes might say people I'm a little introverted again. At the beginning, I might have mentioned that I'm a Gemini. I'm two different personalities. I think for the most part, I am more of an extrovert, but introverted tendencies versus the other way around.
I like that. Okay. What do you wish that most people knew about you, but they never seem to ask or get there?
That is a really hard one.
Sorry.
That Yeah, I am stumped. If anybody asks me a question, I'm an open book. I'll tell them.
Uh-huh.
Not a lot of people ask me about my childhood, like, what's the origin story?
Yeah.
So I on my own now, I tell more stories about my childhood so you can kinda understand why I struggled a lot
Yeah.
and maybe had a mindset of not taking risks and being so driven. Maybe it was generational, but when you look at my childhood and sometimes you have to open up those doors and pull out those skeletons, you might understand that maybe there was a person that was scared and didn't feel quite safe and held back and did safe things so that I could be accepted and move ahead. I might wish that people asked me more about really the origins of why I became the way I was, but who I've rediscovered and who I am now with complete creative freedom.
I love that. You get exposure to a wide variety of leaders and organizations. If you had to give advice to a CEO that's out there that's, maybe going to hear this podcast or maybe think about, bringing someone like yourself in, what do you see that companies are doing or getting wrong right now?
Yeah. This is a big one, and I call it basically checking your pride at the door, because I believe that is what holds leaders back from saying, I can do this. I've got a playbook. I'll muscle through this. I'll work longer hours. I'll work through this challenge, and not having the courage to ask for help.
Yeah.
It is a source of strength asking for external perspective. And rather than positioning it as saying, hey, I need help, which could be seen as a sign of weakness, we as leaders make proposals all the time in response to risks. Given the certain situation that we're going through, might an external perspective help us to give us insight that we may not necessarily see and guide us to get us back to stability? Don't wait too long. Trust your gut. If you got those butterflies floating around, butterflies, there's a connection here.
There's a
Don't ignore don't ignore them. I would ignore them because I would intellectualize them. Stop doing that. There's chemistry, it's your soul, it's your fifth, sixth sense speaking to you. Ask for an external perspective. It doesn't have to be expensive, but you may be better for it. Reach out to me, reach out to Steve. Let us be your guide.
I love that. Yeah, that's a phenomenal answer. If you had to choose like one book or one movie that had a impact on your life, what stands out to you? What would you share with someone else who might be inspired by, something that you've read or watched?
So a lot of that inspiration came late. Being a mother and a corporate person, I didn't have a lot of time to read, but I did get very much inspired when I was kicked out of the nest. One book by Margie Worrell was about being brave.
Ooh,
Secondly, Dory Clark, the book
yeah,
Stand Out.
yeah.
And Jeffrey Shaw also, the self-employed life and Lingo taught me a lot about branding. Those three authors and people that had podcasts I was listening to while I was trying to figure out what's next. So standing out, finding your unique value in your brand and speaking it. Jeffrey Shaw, the entrepreneurial life, and saying, I could do this. I'm a creative. I'll figure this out. And Margie, be brave. The only person that's holding me back is myself.
Oh, that's great.
Thank
If
you.
you could put a message on a billboard that people see on their way to work or school or on the way home, what would you like people to see in terms of your message? What would you like them to absorb as far as advice or quote or bit of guidance that you might give someone?
One of the quotes that I made up, and there's a spelling error in this, but people I choose to be it is clarity amidst chaos cuts through the noise. And that's
Ooh,
in my book. I created that. And even the editors of my book said, no, the word is amid, AMID. I said, no, it's amidst. That's what I say.
love it.
It's clarity amidst chaos cuts through the noise. We need to take time to reflect and really look at the landscape because then only then can we get clarity. When we're on a hamster wheel and constantly moving, we just can't see, we can't be clear, we can't move forward in a better direction.
Yeah. Oh, that's a phenomenal
Deb
one.
Coviello.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. What a great quote. And it's
Thank
amidst, right?
amidst, amidst. That's what I say. So I'm sticking
I
with
think
it.
it's perfect. I think it's absolutely perfect. All right, last three questions. When you hear the words "the ripple effect," what does that conjure up or bring to mind for you when you hear that word or those words?
It's like a pay it forward.
Yeah.
It's you never know where the ripple's going to eventually end, but be brave and have the discipline and pay it forward. Because with time and discipline and not seeking to find what's in it for me, it somehow comes back around in a message from the universe. So that's what the ripple means to me.
Ah, that's great. I love that. What positive ripple could I look to create for you?
Oh my God. Well, just you already doing it. You're sharing my voice, our conversation with others. And I just hope anybody out there, anybody listening to this, if you just want to connect and have a conversation, I'm not out there to sell you anything. I just want to build trust. But I am just grateful for the opportunity for my voice to be heard through your others. And that's the value I gain right now. We'll figure the rest later on.
I love it, and we will definitely for sure.
Mhm.
Um, you brought this up, and it was perfect timing in terms of the segue. What's the best way for folks to learn about your work or get engaged with you in any capacity? Where do you want them
Yes.
to follow you, or any links that you might want us to share, and include in the show notes?
Yeah, so go to my website, dropinceo.com, dropinceo.com, and just see what I'm about and some of my offers and my contact page. You can reach out to me there, but most of my thought leadership comes out on LinkedIn. So look for Deborah and Coviello or the Drop In CEO. You'll see what I'm all about, who I'm talking to, what I'm talking about, and just direct message me. I'd love to just start a conversation and just build a relationship from there. Let's see what we can do and ripple.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah. And I highly encourage everybody that's, watching this or hearing it on the podcast platforms, go check out Deb's podcast. Check out my episode because we had a blast and I thought it turned out phenomenal. I was really, really appreciative of the work that you guys put into it. But the level of guests, I got to be honest, I'm going through a little bit of imposter syndrome. Like the people you've had on there, genuine rock stars, I'm like just a nobody, but I was love your show and I love the guests that you have on it. Everyone is jam packed with really good nuggets, and so I'd encourage my audience to make sure that you have pen and paper in hand ready to go when you turn that podcast on because it's that good.
You're too gracious and kind. Thank you so much.
Of course. Well, guys, we'll be back again with another episode of the Ripple Effect podcast. But until then, Deb, thank you so much for your time, and as always, ripple on.
Thank you.